which this is a big deal. We're about to announce who's replacing Kathy on the podcast.
That is a big deal.
I mean, this is one of the best podcasts in the nation. It's been highly successful.
At least today.
At
least who's going to replace her today.
Totally. And so we better get this right.
Right.
We've done a bunch of interviews, and
you guys give it up for...
Thanks for tuning in to Becoming Something, where we promise to keep the conversation honest and real for young adults in their 20s and 30s. Every moment we live is training for a future moment, and that's why we do this podcast, because we want you to be prepared for everything that life is going to throw at you. Our hope with this podcast is that it would help you become all that God desires you to be. So with that in mind, let's jump right in to this week's episode of Becoming Something.
What's up, podcast world? It's your boy JP in the podcast studio with my boy Nate.
What's up, JP?
We're just doing it, man. It's just me and you.
How are you doing, man?
I know, man. It's like, what are we gonna do now without Kathy?
Oh, just like rejoice.
No,
and
wait.
Thank the
on,
Lord,
man.
and
don't do that. She
just
was a
be
faithful,
so happy.
She was a faithful servant of the Lord.
Yeah, I don't know. I try not to get too sad about the past. Leave it in the past and move forward. I'm just forward looking.
She's no longer with us. I heard you had a little like jealousy bout with the child.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't like her very much.
You would say she stripped everything good from your life.
Yes, Kathy worked with me for 7 years,
Yeah.
and then she had this kid named Grace June. And now I don't think I'm ever going to see Kathy again. So it's hard for me because it's like I want to be happy for her, but this kid stole her from me.
Yeah. So who's going to replace her?
Well, we actually do have a replacement for her, which this is a big deal. We're about to announce who's replacing Kathy on the podcast.
That is a big deal.
I mean, this is one of the best podcasts in the nation. It's been highly successful.
At least today.
At
least who's going to replace her today.
Totally. And so we better get this right.
All right.
We've done a bunch of interviews, and
you guys give it up for new mom. That's not even true. You're not a new mama. New mother of four, Kathy Davidson.
Wow, guys.
Oh, and if you're not watching on YouTube, you are missing out because there is a bundle of grace in her arms. Sweet baby.
Can she say
girl.
something?
Like, yeah, have her say something.
Like, hey, give us a Bible verse.
She's a prodigy.
Have her
7
say
days
something.
Old.
Say
God so loved the world.
say something in the old
something.
mic.
Man, if you're listening on a podcast, you have no idea what's going on.
need
Kathy
to
is in the
tune
room
in.
holding her baby right now.
A 7-day-old
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah, I don't know how you're
Like,
here and
I
not
don't-
in a wheelchair.
I don't know.
I don't really know how that
I don't
works,
know.
but
It's not really much of a wheelchair involved. I mean,
No.
except for maybe when you go.
Maybe if you have a
from
C-section or something, but
Did you have to go in a wheelchair from the
Yeah.
hospital to the car?
no.
Oh, they used to make that happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. All of ours were C-sections.
Yeah. Mine. And yours too, yeah.
how is it, by the way?
How is
Yeah.
what?
Nate-
How was your C-section?
You're ridiculous, man.
You make me so angry.
Yeah.
Why?
Because it is a very painful situation.
Yeah.
And you're over there saying so many
You
dumb
don't
things
know what it's
about
like.
it.
Oh, I don't know.
He's like, oh, I stubbed
I
my
have great
toe one
empathy.
time.
Yeah, totally. I had stitches in the 3rd grade. Cut my
Wow.
eye. It was very painful.
Man.
And I need you to take back what you said about Grace.
Oh, I didn't know
Love
she was
her.
here.
Oh my God.
If she was here, I wouldn't have said that.
Okay, is that how we talk
I don't
about
say
people?
things to people. I say them about people.
Exactly.
Only
You
when they're
guys
not
should have
around.
told me that she could hear me.
So,
Y'all must have
any-
really missed me to have me back a week out. This is kind of crazy.
We did.
I feel
Well,
honored.
yeah.
I
Were y'all
did miss
just
you.
desperate?
I did. And I was like, we're going to have, and I was like, no. I was like, well, let's just see if Kathy can.
She's here.
And then she said, you big timed me on 2. I was like, we'll record 2. And
Oh,
she
you
said,
said
you
no.
were like,
Oh.
oh,
No, I
I
was
have,
proud of myself.
she was like, I have things to do.
Like, feed my baby.
Okay.
I was like, I don't think I could
How
do.
many hours of sleep are you going on?
You know, like 2-hour chunks.
2 hours.
So, like,
chunks.
she eats every 3 hours.
So like
So I feed her for an hour.
4 2-hour chunks.
I don't- I
Because that's
don't
8
know.
hours.
I can't
Oh,
count.
that's not 8 hours. That's
I think
yeah,
I got
8 hours.
I
Yeah, it
think
is
I
8
got
hours.
maybe 2 or 3 chunks.
Man,
of
that
sleep.
sounds so hard.
It's ridiculous.
Let me tell you about my life. I know you're not sleeping that much.
Is your
Let
life
me tell
hard?
you about my life.
Okay.
You want to hear what I had to do
I had
last night?
indigestion last night.
Last night, I was up until midnight
Oh.
because I was working on deep fake voice things on an app.
No, I had something I wanted to say today.
Okay.
This week is a big week. I birthed a literal baby. JP's book was birthed out into the world.
Yep.
And
And
Nate
you
stayed
birthed
up till midnight practicing fake celebrity
you
voices.
birthed apps.
So we're really proud of you. All of those are equal.
Important stuff. Hey, I will say, y'all are just lucky I'm here today, right now. What's happening is NCAA March Madness has started while we're recording.
Oh, yeah.
And you're just lucky I'm here.
It's also your job.
We are lucky. We are so lucky you're here.
If you want to leave,
Let's
though,
just
it's
take a
fine.
minute. Let's just take a minute of silence to express from our heart our deep gratitude for Nathaniel
mean a lot.
I just
Hilgenkamp.
don't,
I don't
have the
get enough
words
attention.
to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Hey,
good.
any boys in her life yet?
Oh my gosh.
What?
Stay away.
And like when she was in the room where all the other babies are, did they do that?
No, we just had her by herself. So like
Oh.
her dad.
Well,
Oh.
she never went to the nursery?
No, they don't do that anymore. They just give you the
But
baby.
they sure do. I had a baby less than 2 years ago. She was in the nursery for a while.
They for sure
He
did
said
it.
they sure do.
I literally had her at midnight,
what?
and then they cleaned us up,
And they
all
just
that
gave
stuff,
it
and they
to
just
you?
gave. And
Give
they're
her
like,
to
all
They're
right.
like, we'll see you
No,
next week.
They didn't really say anything. They're like, have a good night.
I mean, we went without her for like a couple hours, I
No,
think.
we had her the whole time.
You can't.
Were you at a
but, like,
hospital?
did you talk to anyone about it?
What do you mean?
Have
you
did they
can't-
run
they're-
any
You're like,
tests?
hey, do y'all not do that anymore?
Like, can someone take the baby? But no, we just had
oh, we
her.
were totally like, can someone take the baby?
No, we just, I don't know.
Because
They
that's
like-
what
they
what everyone advised us. They were like, hey, when you're in the hospital, let them
Yeah.
let them help you as much as
They
possible.
for sure didn't.
And
They
that's
changed
what
one diaper.
that's how I still handle it with Adelie. I've heard it's just like just let her do
You
it
can't
all.
say that.
Stop.
You can't say that. Nate's a
Stop.
great dad.
Oh man.
So no boys in her life?
No, just like her dad.
It just will be helpful like once she has a
wait,
boy.
Oh,
wait.
you're
Are you saying
transitioning.
just like her dad, like no
Like-
boys in her life, just like her dad? I don't know what you mean.
I just meant like the only guy that should be in her life right now is her dad.
Oh, is her daddy?
We don't need to talk about marriage. That's really
Yeah.
far off. And she's not going to get married. Actually, we could just arrange her marriage.
There we go.
Age 24.
The Hilgenkamps have a son. Make it happen.
That would
That
be my
would be
dream.
awesome.
Oh yeah.
How great is
I
that?
already want Jack and JC to get married.
So
Go 2
how
for 2.
like hey, so Grace June, if you want to marry my son, like let's have this conversation
No,
right
because she will have the worst in-laws.
now. Oh my god.
Oh, well, she'd have one good in-law.
That's those are tough dynamics, man.
In-laws are hard, which is why I think we should talk about them.
Okay.
You're dating someone, potentially engaged to someone, and we've had a few questions about this. Specifically, there was one recently where it was like, hey, I'm dating this guy. He really likes me, but I believe they're engaged. And every time the mom's around, she's so sad about the wedding because she's losing her son and makes it very obvious. And the son's in between it all. I'm supposed to be married to her, but I'm still a son. So,
Yeah.
what
So
do you do?
as you get into a relationship, now you're opening yourself to vulnerability toward a whole nother family, right? And so it's typically a family you weren't aware of, you didn't know. Maybe you guys met in college or after college as young adults, or maybe later in life. And now you're in a committed relationship. You're exclusively dating, but they have a mom and a dad, and maybe their home is a blended family. Maybe it's a broken home. Maybe they're really close with their mom, but they don't have a relationship with their dad, or maybe they're really close with their dad and they don't have a relationship with their mom, or maybe it's sibling dynamics. But all of that can complicate dating, and I think people often are like, "Hey, how do we navigate this?" And one thing that is just a tool, a trick, if you will, something that I think can be helpful is a lot of times when we have questions, we can just ask those questions to the person. For example, in that scenario you just described, to the mother-in-law who is really sad about losing her son, or soon-to-be mother-in-law is really sad about losing her son to a wife, you can just say, hey, you can go to her and say, hey, how can, and it doesn't have to be awkward. It really doesn't. You can say, hey, how can I honor you in this? And you can be empathetic to the challenge. Hey, I'm sure this is going to be really hard for you. And I just want you to know that I want to honor you in this. Now, I want to say something really important right here.
Okay.
I think often, and we've said this a lot on the podcast, I think often we determine obedience by the outcome.
Yep.
And so if that doesn't go well, we assume we did the wrong thing. And just know that sometimes it's just difficult. Like sometimes you're just navigating difficult parents. And so, the scripture says in Romans, it says, as long as it is up to you, live at peace with one another. And so you have to manage your part in that as much as it is up to you. And I know that there's dynamics like maybe his family or her family aren't believers. Maybe they don't have a faith or they have a different faith. All of that can complicate it. I think when we grow up, we think, hey, we're going to meet someone who came from a family just like ours or a family better than ours, and they're going to have a great relationship with their mom and their dad, and their siblings are going to be so excited that they're dating you, and your families are going to blend together just perfectly, and it's going to be this beautiful thing, and they grew up believing the same things you did and eating the same kind of meals you did at the same time you did in the same kind of places you did in the same kind of house you grew up in. But that's rarely the case.
Rarely.
Most often, it's the blending of two families that are really different. They fold the towels different. They have different habits and traditions, different beliefs and ideologies, different priorities and agendas, candidly. And you really, as you date them, you're learning about their family of origin. People ask all the time, what are great first date questions? Well, great first date questions are questions about their family.
Yeah.
Hey, did you grow up in church? What did that look like? What was your relationship with God? What are your parents' relationship with God? How close to you are your siblings? How often do you see each other? How often do you talk? How often do you talk to your parents? What about your grandparents? Are your grandparents alive? These are great first date get to know you questions.
Yeah. Family relationships are already difficult and complicated. Like, I think those are like some of the most complex relationships
Wait,
we
is it
have.
Matt's parents listen to this?
Oh my God.
I'm just saying in general.
Okay, because
family
I'm offended for them.
No, I'm just saying they already are, even within your own personal family. I don't know anyone that doesn't have some sort of like conflict or issue or something they've had to work through. And then you're just adding in a whole other family all at one time with someone that you really care about and love, but you're having to like 25 years of like history or family of origin history that you're just like throwing in the mix with it. It's a lot.
Okay, so you said you can go to that mother-in-law and say, "Hey, how can I honor you in this process?"
Yeah.
But that's confusing to me because the question, it should be flipped the other way around. The mother-in-law is the older, should be more mature person. She should be the one thinking, "Hey, how can I honor her in this situation?" Like it's on them to make the first move. I'm just kind of the young person.
You just should on me.
Nate's like, what did you just?
What did you?
Should.
You just should
on him.
You just
What does-
should on
Don't
me.
should yourself.
What is that? mean?
You said should a whole lot right there. You were like, you should, and they should,
should
and we
do
should,
this.
and everybody should. I mean, you
You're
just
just shitting
showered me with should.
That's not
What's
how
wrong
life
with you right
works,
now?
bro. You can actually
I
say
just
a word that's
thought my
bad.
pastor sinned, and
No.
that was really hard for
I
me.
do not sin.
So wow.
No.
We just talked about that.
I do. Your pastor does sin, but not typically with language, but with cursing. There's a lot of things that should be. You okay? You gonna be all right? There's a lot of things that should be the world is broken.
It's good that scripture says like, and don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example, right?
Yeah.
So like we could say, oh, they should do this, and as believers, we're called to just do the right thing, even if someone else isn't initiating, which I know is like hard and awkward, and we've all probably had those moments where you're like leading up, but it's what you're supposed to do.
The 1 Timothy 4:12 is a great verse because he's saying, hey, people are going to be tempted to look down on you because you're young, but what you need to do is the way you don't let them do that is you set an example for believers in your speech, conduct, faith, love, and purity. And so I think that those are great things to think through as you navigate this. And in a way that you set that example is just have really honest conversations. Even if you're listening and you're newly married, because I know that these family dynamics can play a really challenging role in that season of life. Often you have to talk to parents about boundaries. What the Bible says that we're to leave. For this reason, a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and the two become one flesh. So it's called the leave and cleave verse. I leave my family and I cleave to my new spouse. And that doesn't mean that I write my family off, that I never see them again. Often, in when it was written, it would mean that you would leave and you would move away and you wouldn't see each other for years at a time or long periods of time. But now we have technology, we have phones, we have texts, like we can keep up. And I think it's just, there has to be a DTR, like a define the relationship. Hey, here's what it's going to look like moving forward. And I remember having to do that early in Monica and I's marriage. Is one thing that was unhealthy, and I was the vast majority of our unhealth, for sure. Like 90% of the problem was me. But one thing she would do, as I was 90% of the problem, is she would retreat to her mom. Yeah. And that was her best friend, and they would talk on the phone a lot, and just I just felt like that relationship was a priority over me. Now, that was mostly my insecurities. But we would sit down with her parents, and we just said, hey, we want to start a new family here, and so here's what our relationship should look like. And they were so mature and responded to that really well. But sometimes some people are going to try that, and they may not. And that doesn't mean you did the wrong thing. But I think just to have those conversations in honest, respectful, loving way is how we want to think about it.
So if you're dating someone and it's serious, it's headed towards marriage.
And you got hometowns coming up?
Yeah, you got the hometown date.
Let's go.
What are some things like that you could be looking for? At least, I mean, you can't control how like the in-laws will respond, but what are some things you could be looking for your future spouse to like know that they're going to, I don't know, be on the same page as you, that they're going to help set those boundaries, that they're going to leave and cleave? Because I think sometimes you're trying to evaluate that and you're in love and you think it's great. And then you're like, but they're kind of weird with their parents. Like, what are some things that we could look for? Is that making sense? I'm like new mom brain over here.
No. I mean, I feel the same. But y'all lost me at like, what did you say? Hometown? What?
Oh.
I'm like got stuck there, and I couldn't move on.
The bachelor hometown dates.
Oh, and you meet the family.
But okay, I was like, what in the world? All right.
So like, what would be signs of
Man,
health?
I'm so holy. I never consume any media other than The Chosen.
No, I just don't get your worldly pagan jokes.
Oh my gosh. Unbelievable.
What
would be good things that you're seeing with your significant other of like how their relationship is with their parents, and then what would maybe be some like red flags of like, oh,
if he says mommy a lot.
Honestly,
yeah, and it's just like I don't think you have to hold their family against them, like meaning that somebody may have a terrible family, a terrible upbringing. I mean, they may be like a spiritual orphan, meaning like or an orphan or a literal orphan, like a literal orphan. And that doesn't mean that they wouldn't make a great spouse. Like, God is so redemptive. But there are things that you are going to want to inspect, and they're not all that different as if they were an addict or they had a past or you're just getting to know them. You want to understand, like, do they have a healthy relationship with God through his son Jesus? Is their life yielded to the Spirit? Are they doing life in community? Are they connected to a church? Like, these questions are important questions, and I am blown away, like just mind blown at how many believers don't value that. They're like, oh yeah, well that's no. I'm dating this guy. He's a Christian. No, he doesn't belong to a church. He kind of goes to different churches sometimes, and I mean, he reads the Bible sometimes. I'm like, dude, do not date that person. Yeah. Don't date that person. Yeah. Find somebody who's running hard after God, who has a relationship with Jesus, who is doing life in community. And if you're like, well, they're not, well, maybe it's a situation where they're not yet in their walk and they're going to get there, but like let them get there without the distraction of you. Mm-hmm. Truly. And I know that sounds harsh, but man, I'm trying to save you some time and heartbreak and hurt. Like my motive, people are like, man, that's really harsh. My motive is love for you. I want to care well for you so that you don't get in this place where I even this morning I was asked a question. It's like, hey, my husband is not a believer and it's really hard because I can't talk to him about my greatest love, which is Jesus. He's disinterested in it. And I feel like our marriage is unraveling and I see it all the time and I don't want that for you. So that's why really as you navigate this, and sure, there are going to be some things that are weird. Like if he says mommy, right? That's weird. It doesn't necessarily need to be a deal breaker. It's weird. I mean, you should have a conversation and say, hey, man, I mean, everybody's going to have their little quirks and strange things and whatnot. But Nate still says mommy.
I do. I love my mommy.
Okay. I think
it's for you, Miss Hilgenkamp. She's a big listener.
She's totally listening right now. I just think in-laws, this isn't the case with every situation, But I think it's true a lot of the times is you just see them more than what you would imagine seeing them, or they're in your life more than what you think. When you're dating, you're just thinking about that person. Like you want to add them to your life, but you are also adding their family, and you just want to make sure that those relationships are as good as they possibly can be because they're in your life a lot.
Yeah.
So
I'll say here, it's usually hard.
yeah.
Most often it's a difficult dynamic, especially a daughter and her mother-in-law.
Why
that
is
is
that?
typically. Jesus said, "I did not come to bring peace, but I came to bring a sword and turn a daughter against her mother-in-law."
You think-
and so I'm like, man, that's a prophetic word. I think Genesis 3 is the why. The fall, sin entered the world, and relationships are fractured, and now every relationship is marked by insecurity. And so you have to work hard in that relationship to navigate that. And if you're a mother-in-law and you're listening, just know that the difficult work goes both ways, and everybody needs to do their part to be, Ephesians 4:3, diligent at preserving the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace.
I have a great relationship with my mother-in-law. I feel like I should say that when I responded that way, but we don't wink at each other. We shepherd a young married couple.
But you said Matt calls her mommy. That's what you said.
Guys, we can't talk about that. That was off air.
Okay.
No, but we shepherd this life group of young married couples, and that's the number one thing. And it's
Totally.
always daughter and mother-in-law.
Well, it's two
me
worlds
sad.
have been changed. It's like these parents, it's like, this is my son. I get to hang out with him all the time, see him Thanksgiving, Christmas. Like he's mine, and now
you
it's
just have to give him up. I have 3 boys. This
Right.
is terrifying.
like
for
that's
me,
so
honestly.
hard. And I think
Yeah.
it's hard to appreciate that. If you I mean, I haven't been in that stage.
The
I'm
sacrifice.
giving over my
You were
kid.
totally going to be that mother-in-law.
That is. I'm going to be
You
the problem.
are for
This
sure.
is honestly
I
for
know.
me.
Dude,
I'm
you
going
are
to be
for sure
overbearing,
going to be
and
that.
I'm going to be weeping.
We're
You're
gonna-
gonna
This
want
is-
to be doing
I'm
Bible
gonna-
studies with
Yes, I'm
with
gonna be
Man,
bribing the
daughters.
you got to
mother-in-law.
go back and
daughters-in-law.
listen. You got to go back and listen to this
We gotta say
podcast one day.
that. No.
I feel like we should tell them too. Matt's right. He's
Yeah,
literally
literally.
right on the other side of that camera.
Oh, is
in
he?
here.
Oh, he is here. Oh my gosh!
You didn't know that?
I actually didn't know.
You didn't know he was in here?
Yeah, I didn't know he was in here.
And he's large. He's a large human being.
That is so offensive. He's been working on that.
No,
I'm
he's
saying
tall.
he's strong and
okay.
scary,
Oh, okay.
But I think
but
something
surrender to the Spirit.
to lean into on the daughters-in-law side or the son-in-law side is considering leaning in with empathy for these parents that have raised these kids,
Totally.
have invested, have been at sports games, have paid for camps, have been there tucking them in at night for years and years and years and years, and then all of a sudden they're the child they raised is just leaving them.
Yeah.
And that is so hard. So if you could lean into the conversation, not with why are they so weird, or why are they so clingy, or why are they expecting so much of us, but lean in with empathy there. That's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
And one day
That's
you'll
great.
have to do it. So
How can you honor them? Whether you're just starting that relationship, you're engaged or married, how can you honor
Well,
the
let's
in-laws?
start here. Are we commanded to? It says children, honor your father and mother. And so this is one of the 10 commandments. It is repeated. This idea is repeated in the New Testament, Colossians 3. We see it again in Ephesians, I think 6. I don't know if it's the end of 5 or 6. Yeah, 6. And so that dynamic of children toward their parents, there is an honor that we express it. And of course, that doesn't mean that we remain submissive to our parents when we become adults ourselves. And if our parents, for example, are atheists and they say, hey, you shouldn't go to church, that doesn't mean we shouldn't go to church.
Right.
We have to listen to our greater authority, which is God. But the way that you show honor to anyone is just with a lot of kindness and understanding, empathy, seeking to understand how they feel and why they feel that way, rather than starting from a position of they're wrong. They shouldn't feel that way. To say someone, kind of when I said you should on me, to say someone shouldn't feel some way is not helpful. And to let that feeling grow in your heart is not helpful. You're always going to be better off to say, okay, I want to seek to understand why they feel that way. And as you respond with that way, pray for them, pray for you. I have seen, and this is the hope we'll leave you with, I have seen this situation turn around so much. Yep. And not that I ever had a bad relationship with my in-laws, but man, I love my in-laws so much. I feel like I hit the jackpot.
You really did. They're awesome.
And that's, I'm just insanely thankful for the work that God has done there in our relationship, in their lives. And I mean, it's amazing because now we live here where they live. And they've been so helpful to us, helpful in our marriage, helpful with our kids,
Helpful to the church.
helpful to the church.
honestly.
He's here all the
Unbelievable.
time. He's like,
Yeah.
"What's up, Big Nate?" I mean,
Yeah.
I just love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like insanely thankful to them. And I've seen in ministry, I've seen people have really hard relationships with their in-laws, and I've just seen God change it, like turn it around, where they like look forward to Christmas, they look forward to Thanksgiving, they look forward to those meals together. And so believe and know that He can do that. And He is going to in part use you, and you're going to play a role in the work that He wants to do there. And then sometimes, I think it's important to say this too, and we touched on it earlier, but sometimes you will need to create healthy boundaries. And there could be a toxic, to use a cool kid word, a toxic person in that marriage, and you're going to need to create healthy boundaries there. And so I think we run to that too often. We're like, oh, they're toxic, boundaries, and we overlook the work that God wants to do there and can do there, because He's a sovereign God and He controls the hearts of kings. He directs them like water courses wherever He pleases. So know that, hold out for hope. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
Fine.
I would just say you need to figure out if what they do is wrong or is it just different.
Yeah,
Because a
that's
lot of
good.
times it's just different, but you feel like it's wrong.
Really good word.
Like I know people who they're used to at Thanksgiving, they go see a movie with their family every single time.
Yeah.
And then they get with their in-laws and they just sit around the table and talk for
Yeah.
forever. And it's like, this is driving me crazy. Can we go do something?
Yeah, I mean, you just touched on something too, is like, because it's different than what your family did doesn't mean it's wrong. Like you don't have to build resentment.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Yeah.
build resentment for them because they open Christmas presents in a different order than you did.
Yeah.
Or they treat that day differently. Some people shop on Black Friday, or some people are like, dude, there's no way. We don't want to do that. Like make space for difference of opinions. But the way that I think about what you said, the first thing, which is a great word, is it morals or is it values? Meaning, is it sin? Or is it just different than what you're used to? If it's sin, like you don't want to play into the sin, you don't want to placate the sin. But if it's just different than what you do, don't try to treat it as though it's sin.
Yeah.
And that was like leading into my last thought was, how can you die to self in this relationship? Like, yes, you should create boundaries to maintain healthy relationships. That is important. But more often than not, we use that as like keeping people at an arm's distance. But how can you, lay down your preferences for the good of someone else? How can you die to what you want to do for the good of your in-laws? And God will use that. And then also just pray. Like even now, if you're single and you want to get married one day, pray for your relationship with your in-laws. And if you are married, like go ahead. I already pray for my daughters-in-law that I know I'm going to drive a little crazy down the road with my overbearing sense. But just a lot of prayer.
It's awesome. I love it. Hey, thanks for jumping. I know it's a major sacrifice to come
No
back
problem.
up
I mean, the games are on right now.
here. Yeah,
So
I'm not talking to
I don't know what I
you.
said,
Oh,
but it was fun to be
I'm
with
not
you
talking
guys.
to you. I'm talking to baby mama over here.
Yeah.
man, have we been that boring, girl? She's just flat
asleep
asleep.
the whole time.
Yeah,
she
she
didn't
did
think
not.
any of your jokes were funny.
Unbelievable.
What a sweet little girl. All right, guys. We love y'all, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Becoming Something, where we promise to keep the conversation honest and real for young adults in their 20s and 30s. Every moment we live is training for a future moment, and that's why we do this podcast, because we want you to be prepared for everything that life is going to throw at you. Our hope with this podcast is that it would help you become all that God desires you to be. To find out more, visit becomingsomething.com.